Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Yanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gaganasadrisham Tattvamasya Dilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Triguna Rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Narayanam Padmabhavam Vashishtam Shaktim Chatat Putra Parasarancha Vyasam Sukham Godapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Mata Shishisham Shri Shankaracharya Matasya Padma Padam Chahastamalakancha Shisham Tam Totikam Vartika Karamanyan Asmad Gurum Shantatam Anatoshmi Vishwam Darpanadrishyam Aninagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyan Atmani Mayaya Bhayorivod Bhutam Yata Nidraya Ya Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanameva Dvayam Tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om. So the topic for this afternoon is three gunas. So called Triguna Vibhava Yoga. And it's an amazing yoga. For transforming yourself, there's probably no better yoga than Triguna Vibhava Yoga. The yoga of the three gunas. We explained to you what the three gunas are. When we talked about creation. Maya was, we said was, Maya or Ishvara is Trigunatmika Maya, is the three gunas. Maya is the three gunas. It's all it is. It's only three gunas. These gunas are energy. Isn't what does the science say? Matter equals mass times the speed of light. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Mass means material. So that means what the scientist tells the whole universe is made out of energy. Different types of energy, different frequencies of one energy. There's only one self, so there's only one energy. You need to know that the self is free of energy. Awareness has no energy. These people who are feeling some energetic experiences and think they're enlightened, well, they're wrong. This says self-realized or self-knowledge is devoid of energy, because the self is free of energy. For energy, you need duality. You need friction. To create energy, you need duality. But the self is non-dual. So there's no no energy there. But when the power of Maya appears in awareness, that creates these three gunas, and now we have duality. We have the self and the three gunas. Three gunas are all one energy, but they split into three types of energy: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And if you will recall, I explained that creation involves all three of those energies. Without those three energies, you cannot have a creation. It's impossible. For creation, you need a substance, tamas. Tamas is the substance of the creation, the material substance, our bodies, the material world, the air, fire, water, earth, and space. And those elements, it's very interesting. I mentioned it, I think, but I didn't teach it to you. And I'm not going to teach it to you now because it takes too long. It's quite complicated, and it's not all that important. But we start with this very subtle energy, and then we get space, and then space splits up and becomes air, and air splits up and combines with a part of space, and so on, until all the elements grossify by combining and recombining, and you get air, fire, water, earth, and space. It's quite amazing how, because you see, this is consciousness, but it's tangible consciousness. It's tangible consciousness. No, you can't touch pure consciousness. You can't see it or smell it or taste it or touch it or feel it, but you can see or taste or touch or feel consciousness in this as this chair. This is also consciousness. But it's consciousness as energy. It's yourself as energy vibrating at a very, very low frequency. Very, very low frequency. And our senses vibrate at the same frequency as matter, and that's why we can see matter with our senses. Our mind vibrates at a higher frequency, and it can't see matter. It's at a different frequency. Understand? Now, these three energies are called sattva, rajas, and tamas. So the first one is we have to have, in order for the jivas to work out their karma, we need a field of existence, a material field. I often wondered why Bhagavan bothered with the material world. Because you work out all your karma and everything in your mind. There's no karma in the material world. Karma is only in your mind. So you can work out all your karma in your mind without doing one action. You don't have to worry about doing any actions with the body. But Bhagavan, for some reason, wanted to make things very interesting and created this physical body. And he diluted the jivas so much that they took the body to be, in the material world, to be real. And so they need that, and they have to get this stuff from the material world to satisfy them, to make them happy. So the substance of the creation is made out of this dense, heavy, vibratory energy called tamas. And the idea for the creation, because if you look at the creation, you'll see it's intelligent. There's a nice book that's written about 20 years ago called The Self-Aware Universe. It means when you actually start studying the universe, the living universe, the bio universe, and the material universe, you see how intelligent it is. It's amazingly intelligently designed. So it's all knowledge, in other words. And for knowledge, you need sattva. Sattva is the principle of light or awareness or knowledge. Sat, This is called sat, and sattva, this sattva here, is just pure knowledge or pure light or pure tangible, let's say, or pure knowable consciousness, sattva. It's a very, very subtle, fine energy. It makes it possible for consciousness to think and to gain knowledge. Now, so in that sattva, in that macrocosmic sattva, all the knowledge that's necessary for the creation, all the processes and objects and beings and so forth, that knowledge is contained in the sattvic component. So when you add awareness plus sattva, that becomes Ishvara. That's the pure creator. You see, this creation is pure. There's nothing evil or bad or any problem. It's just a pure, beautiful creation. The problems come later on when we get the rajas and the tamas. We'll talk about that in a minute. So now consciousness has got a mind, sattva, pure mind, knowledge, capability of knowledge. It's got an idea, and now it's got a substance, matter, and both this idea and the substance are made out of what? Out of its own body, out of its own self. There's no other parallel universe that consciousness goes to get the ideas, and then another universe it goes to get the matter and pulls it back and then cobbles it together, because reality is non-dual. There's only one consciousness, there's only one universe, and what? It is made out of consciousness itself. So consciousness is called the naimittika karanam. Karanam means a cause, and the upadana karanam. And that naimittika means the intelligent cause for the creation, and upadana karanam means what? The material cause of the creation. Now, to get the idea to transform the matter into the shapes and that it needs, and to activate those shapes, particularly the living beings or the conscious beings, another energy is needed, and that's called rajas. Rajas is called vikshepa shakti. That's the energy it's a projecting power. It's the power that allows you to move and act and think and feel and create and destroy and so forth and so on. So before we even get a material, before we even get a universe, at the very heart of the creation, right, in the very, very center of Bhagawan's mind, are these three energies. And everything is going to project out from there, so that everything that's projected from these three energies is going to be nothing but a transformation of these three energies. In other words, those three energies are going to be in every object. When we get way out on the surface of the creation, the epiphenomena are all what? Nothing but combinations of those three energies in various proportions. Tamas, the heavy material energy, is called avarana shakti. Shakti means energy. Avarana means a cloud. It's a heavy, dark, dull energy. This is, let's see, let's see, what are we talking about today? What's the topic? Huh? I can't. I know we're supposed to talk about something, but I had a hard afternoon. I was sleeping. That's Thomas. Huh? You know, huh? Everybody knows it. Your mind is cloudy. It's dull. It's like, oh, please don't bother me. I got this to do. And your voice goes slow, and you're so weak, and you can't think, and you bump into things, and you make mistakes, and you just can't be bothered. Anything. You're so lazy, you're like a big lazy slug, slothful. It's Thomas. When that energy, it's a heavy, dark energy. It's a concealing energy. It's like a cloud. The sun is shining, the awareness is shining, and there's this, and it's shining, it's reflecting on the subtle body, on the mind, but there's this great cloud in the unconscious here, this big dark cloud in the unconscious here, and so what? Your mind is like, no. You see Tamasic people, you look at their face, people who are predominantly tamas, and watch their bodies. Their bodies are usually very heavy, and their faces are, their lip sticks out, and their eyelids fall down, and they're like, because what? The subtle body's under this cloud of energy. That's called tamas. Now, rajas is what? Total activity. Now we're going to talk here about the Trigunas and self and not self and Maya, and as I said, this, and then after that, and then we went here and did that, and yoga and Vedanta, just body moving all the time, mind moving all the time, talking, eating, sleeping, walking. That's rajas. It's projecting. The Shakti is disturbing. Your mind is it can't sit still. They often call it the monkey mind. It just hops from one thought to another like a monkey. It hops from one branch. You've noticed monkeys, they never sit still. They can't, even when they're sitting still, they're moving. I saw this woman on the plane when I was coming up here. She had 4 children. And they were all boys, and they were from age about 4 to about age 7 or 8. She must have just had one right after the other. And they all had video games, all of them. And they were eating potato chips, crisps. And she was sitting like this, and she had also a cell phone where she was clearing out her mailbox or something. I don't know what she was doing. She was eating chips and doing this, and this leg was going like this. She didn't know it though. Have you seen the restless leg syndrome? Their leg is going like this, but she didn't know her leg was doing like this, and her foot was going like this. She had no idea her body was moving. There was so much rajas there. And of course, she's in the energy field with her kids who are totally rajasic. They're little devils. I just wanted to whack them all. And they're just making the most terrible trouble. And she's, of course, trying to keep them under control. And of course, the more she tries to control them, the more rajasic they get, and then the more angry she gets. So she's shouting at these kids, and they're ignoring her, and they're playing their video games and eating their chips. And it was just a disaster. I put in my earplugs and my eye patch and went in deep meditation. That's rajas. You need that to move. It's motion. It's activity. Everybody knows that energy. And sattva is clarity. The energy of sattva is still, clear, and aware. Sometimes it looks like tamas, because when you're sattvic, you can sit very, very still, not moving at all, but you'll be like a cat. Have you seen a cat? They'll be sitting like I used to have cats when I lived in the mountains. And the cat would sit quietly like this with his eyes closed, and without looking or anything, just totally relaxed. And if that mouse stuck its head out of its little hole and started and walked into the room just a few inches, that cat knew perfectly. He didn't even move his eyes. He knew exactly where the mouse was, and he could tell, when the mouse was far enough away from his home, and then boom, he was on it in a minute. Totally sattvic, totally aware, totally still. That's the mode of knowledge. It's a motive, So these three energies are operating on all levels, on the material level, on the psychological level, on both matter and mind, are colored by these three gunas, or these three energies. They're operating all the time. Now, if you look at your life, and everybody likes a life that's flowing, that's moving, that's feels like it's going someplace. There's nothing worse than that feeling of being stuck. You know that. That's tamasic. When you're tamasic, you get stuck. And your life, and you have all these obstacles and conflicts, and you can't move forward. We you know, when you're in they used to call it in the flow. You know how it is. It feels like when you're in the flow, one thing happens, and the next thing happens, and the next thing happens, and everything happens in a beautiful sequence, and there's no karmic drag, and you just smoothly go right through the day, and smoothly go right to the next day, and so forth and so on. That sometimes happens. Why does that happen? Because the mind is sattvic, and you're able to process information on the spot. The mind is sattvic, and you're able to process information as it comes. Because life is a transaction, isn't it? It's a transaction between me, the subject, and the object, the jiva, and the object. And I've got, things coming at me all the time, right? And I have to respond to those things. And, in the old days, it wasn't really a problem. Like 100 years ago or 150 years ago, maybe, 2 things a week happened to somebody. They had 1 or 2 interesting experiences a week. The rest of the time, they just went about their duty. They weren't in a hurry. Nothing happened. They were just basically kind of peaceful people a long time ago. Because there was not this kind of intense stimulation and this huge population. Now we have these huge populations. We've got 8 billion people, and they're all rajasic. They're all full of fear and desire. They're tamasic, full of fear, and rajasic, full of desire. And they're all worried about security. And so they're all bouncing off each other, and they're robbing each other and raping each other and cheating each other and trying to get advantage in this world. So there's all this competition going on constantly from all around you. I mean, you've seen the young people today, They don't know what to do. A lot of them just drop out. Maybe it's not so much in Germany, but in America and other countries, there's just too much going on, too much competition, too hard work, and you're not even sure you're going to get a job. You put in 10 years out of your life, and you don't even know if you're going to be secure after all that work, because globally, everybody's competing with everybody else. The world is flat now. There's no borders anymore. So we're in this big cauldron of human beings, and they're all competing for the same resources and generating all kinds of experiences all the time. And life moves at a very fast pace. Look at our information technology. That's all about getting the edge and processing information. We've got to, So, and if you can't lay to rest and experience when it happens, as it happens, if you can't resolve that experience at the moment while you're in that experience, then what happens to that experience? it goes into the causal body and becomes your karma. Huh?
May you repeat this, please?
Yes, I can. I can do it, and I will do it. When an experience happens, you're required to process that and respond according to that experience. And if you can't and resolve it so that your mind is available for the next experience, if I've got something going on here, a conflict in my mind, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to act, I'm confused and so forth. And then another experience comes and demands my attention, I'm not going to be able to deal with that experience properly, am I? Because I still haven't processed or gotten rid of this problem. Huh? So if I take up the new experience and this experience hasn't been digested or processed, what does it do? It just remains in my unconscious mind, and it will come back again. It will come out again. I'll have to just forget it and repress it. Thomas will deny it and repress that experience, that information, and it'll store it here in the unconscious, and later on it will what? It'll come out again. And if I have a lot of experiences, if I'm in a high energy situation where I'll have a lot of experiences every day, interactions with people and so forth and so on, and my mind is real tamasic, what do you think the result's going to be? Huh? The result's going to be what? A lot of heavy-duty karma waiting to be fulfilled, to be completed. There's going to be this more and more and more pressure because these experiences have to be assimilated. They have to be understood. Life is a learning experience. Bhagavan is teaching us through the experiences it gives us. Every experience is a lesson. There's knowledge contained in every experience, and I need to extract that knowledge because for my soul, for my subtle body to grow and learn, and for me to develop here as a human being, I need to extract the information and the knowledge from that experience. But if I am unable to do that because what? Because there's so much experience, for example, or because my mind is so dull that I can't figure out what's going on, then that unresolved experience becomes my karma. And Bhagavan will just create circumstances that forces you to look at that problem again. You'll see it like in relationships. If you have a bad relationship with somebody, and it ends badly, and you say, "I'm done with men. They're useless. I'm fed up with men. I'm never going to have another relationship." How many have been in that situation? Men or women? Men say it too. Women, who needs them? And you talk big, I've had it. I learned my lesson. No more of that stuff. Huh? And then what? 6 months or a year later? Huh? You're right back in it all over again, aren't you? You didn't learn anything. You didn't resolve the previous relationship. You just went out, it was repressed. You did not learn your lesson. So Bhagavan creates a new situation and said, okay, here's another opportunity for you to work this out and learn your lesson here. So like that, if your life is boring and dull and stuck and you wish things were different and you're always thinking about taking a vacation or whatever, it means there's all sorts of unresolved issues in your unconscious that haven't been dealt with. Understand? So, now, if your mind is rajasic when something happens, you'll be unable to process experience too. Because your mind will be too unsteady to get the clear information about what's happening. In Tamas, your mind is so dull that you can't gain the clear information about what's going on in your life. In Rajas, your mind is so disturbed that you miss all kinds of things and you project all sorts of things on the situation and you don't see what's actually going on there. The Rajasic people have all kinds of, they have the same kind of karma that Tamasic people have insofar as they're in a constant state of projection and denial that keep them from processing information, keep them from laying experiences to rest. And of course, that just creates more rajas, because you have more stuff unconsciously that you haven't dealt with, and then your life is throwing more stuff at you all the time because you're rajasic and you're full of desire, so you just engage in more and more objects. Rajas forces you to go out and engage in more objects and activities, more things, more stuff, whatever it is, huh? And so now you've got all this stuff that you know you should be taking care of, but you're not taking care of it because you got so much stuff to deal with right here today, and that creates a huge conflict also, and your mind gets more and more and more rajasic. Now, if your mind is sattvic, right, it's steady, it's calm, and it's clear. And when something happens, you don't react to it. You don't react automatically, unconsciously. You're completely aware of what's going on there, and you can sit still and gain the knowledge of what it is. And then you can also, when your mind is sattvic, you can see what you want. You can tell what dharma is in that situation, and you can respond appropriately. And you can resolve that issue, right, on the spot. Usually when something comes up, a sattvic person will just take care of it on the spot. They won't put it off. They won't say, oh, I'm busy doing this, let's not do it. They'll get up and take care of it because they don't want a whole backlog of unresolved issues that need to be taken care of. With rajas, you're so afraid you're going to miss out on something that you won't take the time to solve the problem because you're so interested in the next experience and getting the next thing that you just blow things off and you do a third-rate job on everything. And Thomas, you do the same thing. You break things, you forget things, you injure yourself, you have conflict with other beings. Right? So it stands to reason that if I want a nice, flowing, smooth life, I should have a sattvic mind, doesn't it? I know you can have all the rajas you want and all the tamas you want. That's quite all right. But your life is going to be what? Uncomfortable, unpleasant, disturbed. Whenever there's a disturbance, it's rajas or tamas. And you find those two together. They're like, my wife calls them the terrible twins. They're like always together. And they're little devils, both of them together. I call them incestuous bedfellows. They're in bed together, having their way with each other all the time. So wherever you've got projection, you've got denial. Wherever you've got fear, you've got desire. Understand? You're looking at reality through this filter of fear and desire. You're projecting, which means you're not in contact with reality. And you're what? Denying, which means you're not in contact with reality. When those two energies are operating in your mind. And those two energies are in everybody's mind. Because the mind is made up of these three energies. But when you've lived out of the light of awareness for a long time, your mind becomes predominantly rajasic and tamasic. Dull and active. Now, this is not to say that you shouldn't, that rajas is bad, and this isn't to say that tamas is bad, and this isn't to say that sattva is all good either. You have to understand that these three energies are in duality, so there's an upside to rajas, and a downside to rajas, and an upside to tamas, and a downside to tamas, and an upside to sattva, and a downside to sattva. You have to know what the upside is, what the downside is of these three energies. Because why? What am I trying to do with my life? I'm trying to get a clear mind. That's what yoga means. This Triguna Vibhava yoga is for the purpose of gaining a clear and powerful mind. It's for transforming my mind. Understand? So I need to understand these three energies, and I need to be able to manipulate these energies to create the kind of mind that I want. Now this yoga of the gunas, that as far as we're concerned, as far as we're spiritual people, and we're going for moksha, and so we're trying to cultivate a certain kind of mind. This guna knowledge works for anybody doing anything. If you're an athlete, you need to have control of the gunas. Or anything else. If you're a business person, if you have control of the gunas, you'll be very successful. And people evolve, according to their natures, evolve this guna knowledge unconsciously. And you'll see people develop, right, these gunas in various very interesting ways. Like, for example, a ballerina. Now, does a ballerina, what's her predominant energy? Rajas, yeah, rajas and sattva. If she's got any tamas, she's going to look like an elephant pumping around out there. Huh? So she can't have tamas. You see all the ballerinas, how they are? Most of them are anorexic and skinny. And they got to stand on their toes. Well, it's going to be painful if you're standing on your toes if you weigh 100 kilos. It's going to be a little painful. And then you're not going to look pretty because you're in pain. And then the audience... So they have to control their tamas, and they have to beef up their rajas. They have to get their rajas to a very high level because they're moving their body all this time, and they need a lot of sattva because they have to execute very complex routines. They have very, very complex series of actions that they need to do. And so their mind needs to be very clear, and their body needs to be very, very wiry and active. Their mind needs to be active and powerful, and almost no tamas. And that's how they evolve it. That's how it evolves in those people. Or take, for example, a sumo wrestler. You know sumo wrestlers? Now they'll have a 400 or 500 pound body. They need tamas on the body. If they don't have tamas on the body, somebody will just flip them over. So they have that body. It's a heavy-duty weight. They're supposed to have it. Those guys eat 5 steaks a day. They have lots of fat on them. They're strong like anything inside, but they need all that weight because the whole thing is to stay upright. If they get thrown down, then they lose. So they need a big tamasic body. What about emotionally? How should those people be emotionally? Rajasic, competitive. So they should have very rajasic, competitive emotions. And how about their intellect? How should that be developed? Sattvic, isn't it? Because that's a game of strategy. That's just like chess. A chess player, he'll be all what? All mental, sattva. And with a lot of rajas, because he's got to think quickly. But his body, doesn't matter what the body is. Just have, because he's not in the physical world at all. He just sits in a chair. So that can be tamasic or rajasic or sattvic. Yes.
But then you have to recommend also here this kind of Kundalini Shakti Yoga, which is taught by such great gurus like Shivananda, because it's one of the best way to create a sattvic mind, a sattvic body. This asanas and pranayama and all this stuff, it's a perfect way to create a sattvic mind.
Yeah, sure. Or you can get incredibly rajasic, chasing Kundalini.
Okay.
I did Kundalini sadhana, and I was incredibly rajasic. I was up at 4 a.m. I was doing bandhas and pranayama and chanting and all kinds of weird cleanses all day long. By the end of the day, I was totally exhausted. Because I wanted to get my Kundalini up. So I was like worse than a business person. I had an easier life when I was in business than when I was trying to get my Kundalini up.
So that Kundalini purpose just for a normal...
No, but see, in all walks of life, in every single walk of life, everywhere, you have people who are under the spell of a predominant guna. And what we're talking about here is crafting your life, making your life, consciously designing the life that you want. Transforming these gunas and transforming your life to create the kind of person that you want to be. It's entirely possible. Because you've got goals. You should have goals. In our case, our goal is what? Moksha. So for us, what do we want? Well, we want a predominantly sattvic mind because moksha is gained by discrimination. Discrimination means separating the self from the objects in the self, the objects that are arising or appearing in the self. That's called that's what moksha is. Knowing the difference between who I am and the objects that are appearing in me, between my body, my mind, and so forth, between the 3 bodies and the 5 sheaths, discriminating myself from those things. Now, I can't do that, I can't discriminate if my mind is agitated. How am I going to do it? I'll be projecting all the time. Or if my mind is dull, I can't discriminate either. I can only discriminate when my mind is clear and still, because then I can see what an object is, I know what myself is, and I can always what? Choose myself over the object. That's what discrimination is. I can always keep my attention on myself and pull it away from the object. This is called the not self, and this is called the self. And discrimination is separating the self from the not self. And the not self is appearing all the time, 24/7, right beside the self. The not self is called the objects appearing in me, my emotions, my thoughts, so forth and so on. For example, I'll give you an example. You say, I am hungry. Now, say, I am hungry. How many people have said I am, or thought I am hungry? Hey, everybody. I don't know how many times a day you think that. Is that true? No. Well, what does it mean to say I am hungry? It means I think I'm what? My prana, maya kosha, or my body, physical body. Or I'm thirsty, that's my prana. I've identified with my prana sheath, because hunger and thirst come from the prana sheath. Huh? So there's a statement of ignorance right there. The I is what? The I, which is always free of this, the I has joined with the hunger, associated with the hunger, and it's lacking in discrimination. That's called aviveka. Viveka means discrimination, and what? And identification with an object is called aviveka. So here I've identified with this particular object, meaning hunger or thirst or whatever. I am happy. There what? The I has identified with sattva. So you're happy when you're sattvic. When your mind is sattvic, then you're happy. So then you say, I am happy. Now is the I happy? No, the I's not happy, and the I's not sad, is it? Huh? The I is what? The knower of happiness. The I is the knower of sadness. There's a separation, there's a gap between what I'm experiencing and me, the non-experiencing witness. And I have to get that, make sure that gap is absolutely clear in my understanding. That means in my subtle body. That's what moksha is. The knowledge in my subtle body of what the self is and what the objects are. And not what? Not confusing the two. We call that superimposition. Mutual superimposition. Projecting on the self the qualities of the objects, or projecting on the objects the qualities that belong to the self. That's called mutually. We mutually confuse the two, or superimpose one on the other. And that's what's causing the suffering. Suffering is caused by that. Because you're not living in reality. You're identified with samsara and objects, and as the objects change, then you change because of your identification, and then you go up and down out of control according to the objects, the behavior of the world around you. And you don't remain in yourself as you are. So, like for example, now in this case here, here's the causal body. And let's say that I want to identify the self. We mentioned earlier in yoga that yoga is an indirect path. You can get to moksha through yoga, although it's a little bit indirect. It's okay. By what? By meditating on the reflection of the self in a sattvic mind. Because as you keep your attention locked on the reflection, the knowledge of the self arises in that meditation. And if you're trained to look for that, and when that arises, you actually understand what it means, then you take that knowledge for yourself, and that's called moksha. Assuming that knowledge sticks and becomes firm. So now, if tamas is in the mind, if the mind is tamasic, what's my idea of myself going to be? There is no self. That's what you'll say. Tamasic people, you walk out on the street and just talk to people. And you say, well, what about the self? Let's talk about the self. And they'll think you're talking about their story. You say, no, not your story. Let's talk about the self. And they'll say, what self are you talking about? Are you goofy? Huh? What's wrong with you? What have you been smoking, man? There's no self. There's no God. Well, there's no God for them. Why? Because they're looking at God, through this mind here, and this mind has totally blocked them. This is why they say, I don't know. Or there is not. They deny it, actually. Some people say, I don't know. They've got a little bit of sattva. But they got enough sattva to say they don't know. But most people just say, are you kidding? There's no God. There's no consciousness. There's no self. I'm talking, there's me. There's only me. People. It's just people. Yeah. If my mind is full of rajas, what's the self going to look like? Here it looks tamasic. There's no self. What's it going to look like here? Shakti, energy. These are your spiritual types who are going for the energy buzz, the energy hit. The Kundalini types and the Shakti ones who love that feeling of, because they're looking at the self through a rajasic mind, and it's generating this kind of energy. It feels very nice. It's very, right? Or maybe not. Maybe they'll just be maybe if the mind is rajasic, if they're a worldly person, they won't see the self at all because the mind is so disturbed, there's so many projections, that it has the same effect of tamas. It creates like a moving screen that's opaque, and the light of awareness doesn't get to them at all. They have no experience of the light of awareness as it shines in their mind. There's no experience. It's just too busy. All the attention just keep going from thought to thought to thought to thought. And it's very myopic. Rajasic is just extremely, your energy is just focused on one little thing, and it just keeps hopping from one to another, all over the place, depending on, it's driven. It's that driven, ambitious energy that you find in people. And these people have no idea what the self is. If they've got a little sattva and they're in the spiritual world, then what they think awareness is they think enlightenment is energy. It's the Shakti, man. It's the Shakti. It's Siddha Yoga. Has anyone? No, Siddha Yoga's over now, but that was Siddha Yoga. That was a Rajasic Shakti sadhana. And everybody was totally fascinated with the Shakti. Amachi, when you go there, have you ever been to her ashram in Kerala? It's Rajasic, Shakti. It's all Shakti sadhana. You have these people just buzzing with the Shakti, trying to get high. And as soon as the Shakti leaves them, Shakti is very fickle. You can't count on Shakti. She's very lovely. She'll kiss you and excite you and all that sort of thing. And then 2 minutes later, she's gone. And your wonderful high state just collapses. And you get tamasic and you get sad because Shakti's run off with somebody else. If you chase energy, you're a real idiot. You're a real fool. Because it's fickle. You can't count on it. It goes up and down and all around and hopping here and there. The reason people like it is because they're so dead spiritually that it makes them feel alive. They're so tamasic spiritually that Shakti makes them feel like they're alive. They feel excited. Oh my God, wow! They're basically bored to death. They have no idea what sattva is. Sattva is an amazing energy, but it's not exciting. It's uplifting and incredibly wonderful energy that's full of bliss. Sattva is just bliss itself and so full of it. And it's not disturbing at all. And it's not exciting, it's fulfilling, satisfying. Rajas is totally dissatisfied energy. It's always wanting more and always changing and so forth and so on. So if my mind is rajasic, I'm not going to be able to contemplate on myself, am I? I won't even be able to, even if I could fix my mind on the self for a minute, what would happen? The next vasana that exploded, the next rajasic vasana that exploded, my attention would go with that vasana. This is why you see people in meditation. I'll do a meditation and get them in a real sattva, and they'll just be all blissful and anything. And then as soon as the meditation is over, they'll just pop up, and they'll start talking like anything and run out and start doing things. The meditation's over. That rajas is in there just waiting. Oh my God, when's the meditation going to end? And I wish it would get over. My God, this silence is beautiful, but it's killing me. I've got something to do. And, and they just jump up and off, and they'll start talking. Just babble. Just express that energy to get rid of that unconscious, that uncomfortable energy from that suppression of the rajas. Now, what if my mind is right? The self is shining all the time. It shines through a rajasic mind, and it appears as energy, as agitation, either positive in the sense of spiritual kind of energy, or negative in the sense of worldly energy, but still it's all just excitement. And as Thomas, it's just what? Ignorance and dullness. But if my mind is sattvic and clear, and I'm meditating on the self, what am I going to see in my subtle body? The self like it is. On a clear mirror, you can't tell the difference. You can see what the self is. It's clear. This is what samadhi means. Samadhi means you have a sattvic mind, and what? And the mind is clear, so it sees the self, and it sees everything equally, because when it sees the self, it becomes the self, and then its vision is non-dual. So it sees no difference between, as we said yesterday, a lump of gold and the excreta of a crow. What things that seem to be very, very different, it sees them as the same. Therefore, what is the conclusion? Therefore, what? What conclusion should I draw? Our sadhana, the Triguna Vibhava Yoga, is what? Managing the relative proportions of rajas and tamas to produce what? A predominantly sattvic mind. Now, you don't have to manage sattva, although if you do sattvic activities, you will not be doing rajasic and tamasic activities. Why don't you have to produce sattva? Because the mind is, we said, the subtle body is made out, the subtle body is the reflector of awareness, and the subtle body is composed out of what guna? Sattva guna. So the subtle body is predominantly sattvic. That's its nature. That's why it can reflect. Remember we talked about the dream state this morning? We called that tejasa. That was reflected awareness that illumined the what? The objects in the dream world. Because the mind itself is sattva. That's why it can know. It's the knowing, experiencing function. Yeah. So what I need to do is what? You know what a mala is? Does everybody know what a mala is? Huh? Yeah. You know what the word mala means? It means that which takes away impurities. Mal means impurities. And you know what mal is? M-A-L? Rajas and tamas. And the mala removes rajas and tamas. That's why it's a mala. It gets rid of mal. How does it do that? It focuses the mind on what? A thought of the self. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namah Shivaya. My mind is what? Constantly what? Thinking only of the Lord and observing the gap between those thoughts, between those mantras. Because in the gap, consciousness shines through. The sattvic, in other words, the reflection of awareness shines through that gap, and I start to get peaceful, clear, so forth. And my tamas and rajas get removed by that process. If you want to get a very sattvic mind, do japa for however long, how much, depending on how much it takes. It doesn't take that long to get your mind purified through with japa. So what we're doing in this yoga is we're looking at our mind all the time and purifying the rajas and the tamas. Understand? Now, how do you purify rajas and tamas? That's one spiritual method, is by just keeping your mind sattvic, by chanting or meditating or something like that. But we can't just be doing our chanting all the time because we're busy people, aren't we? We have other things to take care of. So sadhana for an active person is what? Is looking at the thoughts and feelings that are arising in awareness, and determining the cause. If I want to get rid of them, if they're sattvic, if they're tamasic and rajasic, and trying to find what caused those feelings, those rajas and tamas. In other words, rajas and tamas are created by the actions you do. They're the unseen effect of your actions. So if you do tamasic actions, say you drink beer and eat schnitzel a lot every day, a lot, and say you're really sattvic and pure, and then you decide, I think I should eat wurst and schnitzel and schinken and lots of cheese and bread and typical German diet. What's your mind going to be like after a few days? It's going to be tamasic. It will be tamasic. It tastes good and you feel all wonderful and it's all lovely. It's all tasty and all that sort of thing. But just wait a week or a month. You'll be dull and stupid and sleepy. Because the unseen effect of vasana from that particular activity, in other words, ingesting those kind of... I'm just using material example. It also is true for psychological things, for relationships, for sex, for money, and all these things. Every possible activity that we do in life is guna related, obviously, because why? Everything comes from the three gunas. So what I have to do is connect the activity with the unseen effect. That is, even let's call it the post-digestive effect. Let's say my mind is a little agitated. And I go to the pub and I have a beer. Now what happens? My mind is rajasic, and I pour the beer in, okay, and then my mind gets sattvic. Why? Because the tamas has neutralized the rajas. Like teenagers, if you look at teenagers, another example. Teenagers are very neurotic. Most teenagers that smoke, most adults that smoke, started smoking when they were teenagers. Why? Yeah. To calm down. Because the tamas, taking tobacco, tar and nicotine, what? That rajas is neurosis, is rajas. Their minds are going like this all the time. They're just neurotic. And when they learn how to smoke, and first time they take that, what happens? That the tamas, the tar and the nicotine, coats the little alveoli in the lungs and slows down the breath, the respiration, and then the mind gets quiet. And it feels so good. Not that it's good for you, but temporarily it feels good. Why? Because it's stopped the agitation in the mind. The mind is connected to the breath, and the breath comes slow, and then what? Then the mind slows down. And now, in order to have a calm mind, what do I have to do? Smoke, drink, or sex, or anything, So I start managing my rajas and tamas with these gross methods. And the more rajas I get, the more tamas I get. They're always together. Understand?
Uppers and downers.
Yeah, uppers and downers. Absolutely. Uppers is rajas, downers is tamas. In the drug culture. The drug culture is the same thing. You get really up, and then you crash, and then you'd have to take an upper. Or you'd get so neurotic from being too high, you'd take some speed, you'd have to take a downer, a quaalude or something, and get really dull. Feel good. And then you get bored and tamasic and dull, so then you need to take some speed to get yourself active again so you can do things. So everything we do creates a vasana, a rajasic or tamasic or sattvic vasana. Understand? Everything you do. And so if you're going to transform your life and get your mind prepared for this great knowledge, then you're going to have to what? Change the relative proportions of rajas and tamas to get the kind of mind that can assimilate this knowledge. If you have a hard time understanding what I'm saying, what we're saying here, then it's only because your mind is tamasic or rajasic. And your mind is sattvic, you have no trouble understanding what is being said. It goes right in and it makes perfect sense. This is called Triguna Vibhava Yoga, the yoga of the three gunas. And this is a continuous thing. Now, how do you recognize a guna necessarily? Every guna has a signature thought. There are signature thoughts associated with each guna. So, like for example, I don't want to do that. What guna is that? Tamas. So you analyze your thought life in terms of those gunas. And you can tell by the type of thought that you have and by the type of feeling that you have what guna is operating on you. And then you go back, and you figure out how it is you got in that particular guna. What it is you're doing that's reinforcing that guna. What behavior you're doing. How you're relating to your wife. How you're relating to your boss. The kind of people you're associating with. You may have a very beautiful diet and a beautiful home and your body and all that sort of thing, but you may associate with Rajasic people. If all your friends are Rajasic, what is your mind going to be like? Rajasic. Duh. Huh? And you say, well, why am I always restless? Well, it's because you're associating with people who are always restless. And your mind just picks up that and it feeds your Rajas and you just get Rajasic. You hang out with tamasic people, you'll get tamasic. The worst is when they're family members or relatives and you feel that you can't get rid of them. Yeah, that's the worst situation. That's like being in jail. You know, your mom or your pop or your brother or sister, this is like Rajasic or Tamasic. And you gotta live with them. You gotta be in the same house with them. And you can't stand it. Because you're trying to cultivate sattva. How you eat, the foods you eat. Food has a big impact on the state of your mind. Amazing how quickly you can transform your mind through your diet. That won't do it completely because there are all kinds of we have all sorts of other aspects of our life. In your work life, what kind of work you do and what your work environment is like. That's going to determine whether your mind is Rajasic, Tamasic, or Sattvic. You know, how you make love. Make love, sex. How you handle money. How you handle money is Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic. Person that's always borrowing in debt, in debt, what kind of gunas do they have? Rajas and Tamas, right? Debt creates creates an obligation, and that obligation an attachment, and that attachment agitates your mind. So you got Rajas and Tamas, they're debt. Sattvic people don't go in debt. They'd rather live under a tree than I never borrowed a dime in my life. I actually slept in my car for some time because I didn't want to go into debt to pay for an apartment. So I slept in my car. I just, yes, it was inconvenient, but it felt a lot better than knowing that I owed that deposit for the rent and I had to pay the rent and go to all that sort of thing. And I waited till something better came along. And pretty soon Bhagavan gave me something better. But I couldn't stand that feeling of being in debt. It was an agitation on my mind. It was a weight on my mind. It was tamasic and disturbing to be in debt. Right? So because the reality is the three gunas, everything you're doing and every contact you have and every situation you're in is guna driven, guna related. So, yes, sir.
But the danger is if I take this too seriously that I get also a neurotic mind because always when I'm in contact with Rajasic or Tamasic people,
No, you not necessarily. You just be reasonable. You just write them off. You don't have to, You just politely disappear from their lives.
Okay.
That's all.
And in our everyday reality, it is not often possible to manage our life in that way that your sattva is there.
Oh, yes, it is. You just take the karma yoga attitude.
Yes, okay, that's the point.
Because karma yoga will create sattva. Karma yoga, you offload your rajas and tamas on Ishvara. You leave it up to Ishvara. So you let Ishvara worry about it. Now Ishvara is not going to worry about it. Ishvara is just going to do what Ishvara is going to do. So it doesn't have a problem, and you don't have a problem either because you know it belongs to Ishvara. So you don't, So by practicing karma yoga, you develop sattva very quickly. But, having said that, you don't want to use karma yoga. You won't want to stay in a bad situation, in a rajasic and tamasic situation, and try to cope with that situation with karma yoga. People do that all the time. And then after a while they say, well, karma yoga is not working. We get this quite often in the satsangs from people around the world. And they say, well, karma yoga is not working. And then I say, okay, well, tell me about your situation. And they're always in an odd dharmic situation. So, well, the reason you're agitated is because you're in the wrong situation. You can practice karma yoga all day long and you're still going to be agitated, but you're not in a situation where you should be. You're in an adharmic situation. You're doing the wrong job, you're in the wrong relationship, or something is wrong about the way you're living. And they're too attached to the way of living to actually change it. So they think, oh, well, I'll just do karma yoga. And then they write me and they say, well, karma yoga doesn't work. I say, you're wrong. You don't work. Karma yoga works. But karma yoga means what? I've got to look at my situation and live a certain way. A karma yogi lives a certain lifestyle. There are 5 basic rituals that karma yogis have to do, or you're not doing karma yoga. You have to worship the deities, you have to worship your ancestors, you have to worship the saints and sages, you have to do social service, and you have to take care of the environment. Those are all rituals that are enjoined on karma yogis. Called the pancha yajnas, the 5 yajnas, the 5 sacrifices that karma yogis have to make. Which involves what? Living a pure life. And no, that doesn't mean you have to be mean to people or nasty to people, but you have to figure a way to wiggle out, get out of situations and create the right kind of sattvic situation, sattvic life, your environment, your body, your house. Huh? I can walk in a person's house and I can tell in 2 seconds whether they're tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. Just look around, you can tell. Look at their bodies. Look at how they walk, how they talk. You can tell instantly. Listen to their voice. The voice is either sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. You can tell what guna is predominating at any moment in anybody. Right? It's an amazing tool. It's an amazing knowledge to have. You can't believe, psychological stuff. When you understand this, you'll be able to read people like a book. You'll be able to tell exactly what their problem is. When they'll tell you something, they don't know what energy they have. They don't see their energy because it's hidden. It's all here. But when you know these energies, then you can see. And the way you can tell what energy is in them unconsciously is by the signature thoughts that those energies are producing. That's all. We're about to write a book on that. That's our next book. We're going to write a book on the gunas and explain this whole thing in detail, because I'm surprised that, honestly, that nobody actually done it properly. In the yoga world, there's a little bit of guna talk. It's mostly related to diet and so forth and so on, but it's a really, really sophisticated and complex science and an extremely powerful way to transform yourself. Understand? Now, just having a sattvic mind is not enough, because there's a downside to sattva. And there's an upside to rajas. What's the upside to rajas? Motivation. You need to have rajas. You need to be motivated, because there's things that have to be done. So you have to have enough rajas to what? Motivate yourself to accomplish what you need to accomplish. We're not saying you should just throw all the rajas out. You need to manage the proportion of rajas so there's not too much. But there's enough to what? Accomplish the task that you need to accomplish. So rajas is very good, up to a point. But when it's driven by what? Insecurity or incompleteness or insufficiency, then it's a problem. Because then you keep trying to do more and more and more and more and more to fill up the inner emptiness. You're feeling empty because why? You don't know who you are. You're feeling bored and lonely and empty and unstimulated and unexcited. So you keep doing more and more things to try to fill up that hole, that empty hole inside yourself with rajas. Or you just try to cover up that emptiness with what? By getting unconscious. Sex and heavy food and drugs and alcohol and all of that. You just, right? Or you just become completely tamasic to try to like cover over that hole, that pain that's there operating in your heart. You need Thomas too. You need Thomas, because if you can't sleep, forget it. Forget it. You're a mess. If you can't sleep, so you need to be able to get the right amount of sleep, because your body needs to rest and heal and so forth and so on. And you need to be practical. Thomas is practical energy. Thomas is a fixed energy. You need to take your ideas and actually work them out in the world. That's a quality of tamoguna. You can't just have all these wonderful things and not do anything about it. You make all these resolutions, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I should do this, and I should do that, and you say and make all these statements, and then you don't do it. That means you don't have enough Thomas. You need the Thomas. You need to get down and work it out. Put the procedure in place. Take care of the physical thing that needs to be done to make your ideas real. So yes.
Can one be too sattvic?
Yeah, you can be. You see this often in the spiritual world. You can get way too sattvic. Those are your space cases, your space cadets. They're often gone with the fairies. Yeah, you know those kind. You look in their eyes and there's nobody home. Oh yeah, the spiritual world is full of them. Particularly women, they're rajasic and sattvic. They have more sattva and raj. The way they get the sattva is by doing their spiritual practice very intensely. See, because they use the rajas to do spiritual practice. So they're going from morning till night, and that generates a lot of sattva, and then they get blasted out. They get really high, and then they come to me and they say, I got a little problem. I say, well, what is it? Well, I need to get grounded. I need, it's like, earth to Susan, hello, coming down. It's like they're in some different dimension altogether, yeah. And with sattva, you have another problem, big problem, vanity. Vanity. You think you're so pure and so good and so holy, and you just think you're just one big love bumble, and you're so wonderful, and you have this smarmy kind of smile on your face all the time that's telling everybody, look at me, I'm so pure. See the downside? When you start to get in control of yourself, then that the ego takes over, and so the downside, too much sattva, you'll find this kind of vanity and arrogance in these spiritual people. Really makes you sick. I'd rather have a nice tamasic person and go out and have a beer and watch TV. Let's see, what else? What else is a? Yeah, of course.
Why is fear Thomas? Because I always thought it must be Rajas, because fear is the nerve system.
Well, it is. It's Rajas and Thomas, but fear arises when you don't know what's happening, doesn't it? Like, for example, you're walking down a nice middle-class neighborhood, and in the street is all, and the sidewalk, and it's at night, and you have street lights, and everything's fine. It's a lovely evening, lovely night. It's dark, but you have street lights, so you can see. And then suddenly the power goes out, the electricity turns off. What's the first thing you start to think? You start, immediately you become fearful. Why? Because you're not getting any information. You start to imagine maybe somebody's behind that bush. Now, when the lights were on, you never thought there was anybody behind that bush. But now, as you walk by that tree or that bush, you suddenly think there's somebody hiding behind that bush. You start, You start looking for your light quickly. You want to get the light back on. Because when you're in the dark, you're fearful. You don't know what's going to happen. Right? And that fear produces anxiety, rajas. You'll find rajas and tamas are always together. The wired but tired. Do you know that one? They're wired but tired. These are these yuppie types. The yuppie types, ambitious types. They're out there in the world and they're going, doing. They just got a million things going, and they have so much rajas that they can't sleep. They're busy all day long, and they have insomnia at night. And so the next day, they're still agitated, but they're totally tired also. They feel exhausted, but their mind is agitated. So the tamas and the rajas are like sitting there side by side. Oh, it's painful. It's awful. Well, how many people are like that nowadays? The rajas and tamas is completely out of control. Manic depression. What they now call bipolar. You know bipolar? That it used to be called manic depression, but that was considered PC, politically correct. So now it's bipolar. But it just means what? You're really rajasic, and then you're really tamasic. And then you go back to being really rajasic, and then you go back to really tamasic. And there's no sattva there, so you can't gain any kind of control or knowledge over your life. I had a friend like that. He was a lovely man, and we were quite good friends. This was a long time ago when I was in the antique trade. And I met him in business, and he had a little shop, and I had a little shop. And he was manic and depressive. He was totally rajasic. So, and he'd go on these, what he called a run. In other words, he meant he'd stay awake for like 8 days or 10 days without sleeping. Just doing. Right? Morning, noon, and night, right through the night he'd work, and he'd be working. And then after maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks of this, he would just collapse. And he'd get in his bed, in his room, in his house. He'd close all the windows and pull the drapes, turn off the light. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't do anything. And he'd just stay inside there, just sleeping and like totally tamasic for 2 or 3 weeks. Just nothing. Everything fall apart out there in the world. He didn't care. He was totally tamasic. And then what? Then the rajas would come back, and then he'd go again like that. So he's going totally high and totally depressed like this, up and down, up and down. So one day, and he didn't know what it was, and he was behaving. Obviously, his behavior was very, disturbing. People wondered what was going on, this guy. And one day, he was driving up the street, and it was in the ghetto area in San Francisco. And it was a real low-life area. In fact, it was on what's called Fillmore Street. You may have heard of Haight Street. Haight and Ashbury, you may have heard of that street.
Fillmore East, yes?
Yeah, Fillmore West. Fillmore.
Concert.
Yeah, the concert place where all the Grateful Dead and all those people played and all that. Well, at the corner of Fillmore and Haight Street, the Haight-Ashbury was where the big psychedelic thing happened in America in the 60s and early 70s. And that was like the rectum of the city. It was really low. Everybody down there was a criminal. Basically, the whole area was just criminals. There were no good people there. and there was a bar on the corner named Hank's 500 Club, and nobody white ever walked in there, or if he was white, he was a big criminal, and had just gotten out of San Quentin, one of the big prisons. And there were whores walking up and down the street, and junkies shooting up, and pimps walking along, and it was just a mess. And Michael was driving up the Haight Street. He had a pickup truck, and he used to put his antiques in. And he was on the way up the street, and he was on a run. He'd been awake. He'd been up for 3 or 4 days, hadn't slept, and he was on. He was like total Rajas. Just going like, and with Rajas, you don't want anything in your way. Something gets in your way, and boy, you get pissed off. You're ready to fight. I mean, nobody's going to stop you, because the pain is so great that you have to keep moving. As long as you keep moving, you're okay. But as soon as you stop, that rod just backs up, and it's just really, really painful. So he's coming up the street, and he finds himself behind a big Cadillac convertible. This great, big, huge car, and it's a convertible, the top, no top, and it's driven by a black man who's the big drug dealer of that area. And he's the coolest guy you ever saw. He's beautiful, he's got his muscles, he's got his gold chains, his rings, he's got his stupid hat on, and he's just cruising up the street. He's in no hurry. He's looking at everybody. He's got his dealers are lined up, and he sees the whores there and all this sort of thing. And so he thinks he's like in his living room. This is my territory. That's his idea, see? And so he stops right in the middle of the street. And Michael's behind him. And there's traffic coming the other way, and people are piling up now behind Michael. And he stops, and then some drug dealer, comes walking over, just real slow like and easy, and they do howdy bro, and and they start jiving and carrying on, and they're just sitting there talking like they're in a cafe or in their front room. And Michael, he's like getting more and more and more anxious, because he's got somewhere to go, and he can't move. There's cars behind him, and this guy's not moving. So he did something that he was just crazy, he put on the horn. He went, and the guy was so cool that he just ignored it. He was like, fuck you. He didn't even give him the finger. He just ignored it. And of course, that made Michael even more angry. That Rajas turning to anger. See, when you got Rajas is desire, and when desire is frustrated, it turns to anger. And then, and the longer that anger stays there, the more violent you become. You've got to get it out. It's too painful. Rajas is the source of all pain. Tamas, you don't get pain. Sattva, you don't get pain. If you're having pain, a lot of pain, it's because of Rajas. So he's getting more and more and more frustrated, and he hits the horn again, and all people are looking at him like, is this guy mad? What's he doing? Because this man could just get out of there and just shoot him, and then get in his car and drive off. He doesn't care. But he's ignoring Michael. And Michael hates it. He wants to move. So what does he do? He puts the car in reverse, and he backs up about 5 feet to the next car that's just behind him. And then he pushes the pedal down full and puts it in low gear and pops the clutch. And boom! he hits that Cadillac like boom. And that's not good enough. He does it again. The man is like this. He's gone like this, huh? And he does it again. And he's just so angry. And he's got a big truck. He just pushes that Cadillac right across the street, through a parking meter and into a storefront window. And the glass comes down and almost kills the poor guy. Of course, the police come. Police immediately show up. You never saw the police, but suddenly they're there. In a minute, the police are all there. Huh? And they subdue him, and he starts fighting with the police. And he's yelling at them and telling them all sorts of things. I tell them this and that. Of course, when they got to the police station, they just beat him up. So he got a really serious beating from the police. And then they put him in jail, and they charged him with attempted homicide, murder, attempted murder. It was called assault with a deadly weapon. A car is a deadly weapon if you use it. I mean, you can kill somebody easily with your vehicle. And he had no money. And so the judge said, well, we'll have to appoint an attorney. So they gave him an attorney. And the attorney went to talk to him. And then the attorney realized that he was cuckoo. So he told the judge, he said, this man's not a nutter, he's not a criminal. We need to send him out for a psychological evaluation. And then they discovered that he was manic depressive. And they put him on lithium. And lithium sort of smoothed out the rajas and the tamas. It was still there, but it suppressed the rajas and the tamas, and he was able to function sort of reasonably. But gradually, slowly, he just declined, and he died in very miserable circumstances after many, many years of suffering. So these two energies are your friend, but they're also your enemy. And understanding them and managing them by the way you live is what we call sadhana. Understand?
Krishna, Krishna